Wings on, wings off. That boy just can't make up his mind. I just like seeing how it looks when it's finished a lot. This morning I've hand sanded the seams smooth on the fuselage. Had a big piece of epoxy right in here that would have kept my top from going on right, but on out that. I also epoxied on the deck with the servo in it. Wished I could find a small servo for that, but I can't. This was the big piece of epoxy that was in the hatch thing, so yeah, there's always cleanup work after you epoxy or glue. So now we'll roll it over. I'm going to put the bottom skids on it. Again, I'm just checking the seam again. Oops, there's a little place that could stand a little more. There's another one. Could stand just a little more sanding. Yep, okay. Let me hit those two little places real quick with the sander. Yeah, that's much better. Just really sanding the edge off any epoxy that's sticking out so that anything I glue on now will actually stick and won't have anything holding it out. So I'm going to glue the front skid on and the rear skid on. I'm just going to use hot glue, put just a little bit in it so that I can get it off easily should it break in the future, but I don't want it falling off. Yeah, I think those are going to do really good. I put a little hot glue here, a little hot glue here, a little hot glue right there. Got just a little excess right there. I'll have to trim when it cools. Pretty much cooled now as it is. And then the front skid. Oops. Well, I thought I centered that, but it looks like I didn't, did I? I missed by just a hair. Just a second. Oh well, it's just going to have to stay. It's there. Unless I heat it, it's not going to move. Now that's just the kind of accidental things I do in life. I've got a couple of those flaws in this build. Such be life. I hate that. It's not off by far, and if I hadn't told you about it, nobody would ever have noticed it. At least I got the front centered, it looks like. Oh well. Yeah, that's going to work. Go to the GPS. Yeah, I like that. That's going to work for me. Yep. I think that's much better than the factory. Okay, so now I've got to cut a place right here to embed the GPS. Then I've got to get a cable to go from here to where the flight controller will be for the GPS. I did put my popsicle stick idea in there. Just pushed it through the fuselage. Then I'll have to hot glue that telemetry radio in. Then I've got to make up a cable for that telemetry radio to the flight controller. And then I've got to get in the video controller Friday. And then I'm going to run the video controller out on one of the wings. And I have to make up a cable for that. Got to glue the telemetry radio in. Glue the ESC down. That's all I can really say for sure right off the bat right now. Seems like there were some other things. Yeah. And a flight controller is going to go in there. Gotta find a CG. See where the center of gravity is along this line, and want the flight controller as far. I'd like the center of gravity right through here and right through here, and a big X right through the center of the flight controller, but I'm probably not going to get that. Matter of fact, you know, I don't think I'm going to go much further forward than this, but it'll still work. We just get the center of the flight controller as close to the center of gravity on the platform as possible. And then the RC receiver, boy, I wonder, can it be glued right there to the back of the equipment compartment, like right there, and then do something with the antennas. If not, I may have to make up a new cable for the little Crossfire Nano diversity. Two little Crossfire Nanos right side by side. Okay, there are things to do. I just have to get my act together this morning. Took Pam to the airport. She's going to see her mother for 4 or 5 days in Nebraska. So I've got plenty of quiet time until she gets back. These are all the parts I've got left that aren't physically on the airplane. These are the 2 bottom pieces of plywood for the hatch system. This glues, oops, I'm gonna drop it. That glues underneath there. If I can get it back. So I've got epoxy that underneath there also. And then there's one for the front. It has to be epoxied underneath, not here, and underneath here. That has to be epoxied in. So there's those 2 pieces for the top hatch. Then the prop. I've got a little problem with the prop. Me and the guy at Atlanta Hobby worked on figuring this out and figuring this out. I've actually got to get another, I hate to do it, washer right here to go between this nut and the washer, because this rod is not threaded all the way down, and right now it's not. It'll turn freely. The nut's tightened down as far as it'll go, but it'll still turn freely. So I've got to go just to a local hardware store and figure out a couple of washers to put in there. Okay, so there's a little indentation dug in for my GPS. Not very good at that kind of stuff either. I do have to make up the cable for it before I can put the holes in the back to go down and then back. This foam is really thin, so I had to be really careful about how far through I cut. I'm glad I at least got that part right. So make up my cable. I'll put 2 holes down through here for the cable itself, and then we'll hot glue that in. Yeah, baby. And in my true normal style, I broke the epoxy that's right down through here. See, I told you that was thin. I got it when I was trying to cut out this back slot for wires. I just got it too thin. Now, when I put hot glue in there and then put the GPS on top of it, everything's going to be 100% fine, because these outside edges are going to take most of the weight. But there's the way the GPS, compass, barometer, IMU, CAN bus, not sure what all's in that unit, but there is a bunch in that unit. That's the way that that's going to be. I need to get a cable on it, and then I can glue it. There's my little cable for the GPS to the flight controller. All I need is ground, supply voltage, transmit and receive. That's all I have on the other side. The M8Q-CAN has a bus controller in it. It has CAN bus. We all know that, don't we? CAN bus, and it has I2C bus and a regular UART bus. And then there's a bus controller in there. It takes care of all that stuff. So actually, my compass data and my airspeed data are going to come over from the M8Q-CAN to the flight controller, all on this one cable. Although the airspeed indicator is plugged into the I2C port on the M8Q-CAN, and the CAN bus is internal, so all this should work really well. Let me click that in there and we'll see what it looks like. So there's both connectors, the one going to the airspeed sensor and the one going to the flight controller connected. And I'll start heating up the hot glue gun, because that's basically, oops, finished. So we'll hot glue that in. While I was waiting on the soldering iron to heat up and stuff, I went ahead and epoxied in that wooden piece right here, so the screw for the top canopy can go through, and I also did the one in the back. So take these screws out now. Just wanted them in there so I didn't get epoxy in the hole, and get the hole stopped up. And that has been accomplished. So we can take those two screws, put them back in the parts dish. So right now in the parts dish, there are 2 screws and 2 washers. And those two, I'm going to set right over here, because those two go through this top piece and then screw down inside there. That's the way this works, front and back. So basically, all the parts from the kit, except the prop, are almost all on the mini Talon. Let me get the hot glue gun out. Okay, there's the GPS hot glued in. And that hot glue will fortify that foam where I kind of got it thin. But that should be just fine. Hope I got it forward. Yeah, it is. While I was at it, I hot glued the ESC right down there in the bottom of the fuselage, and I also hot glued the telemetry radio to that popsicle stick. And the telemetry radios, the antenna is offset on one side of the telemetry radio. It's not in the center. So with that antenna in the center, the radio is, I don't know if you'll be able to see this. There we go. The radio's cocked just a little bit, but that was pretty much unavoidable. So I have my cable for my GPS made up, and it isn't long enough to go to the flight controller. You got to be kidding me. I may have made my cable too short. That is just unbelievable. No, we'll see once I get the flight controller in there. That would be a typical bonehead move for me. But anyway, there's the GPS hot glued in, the cable made up for the GPS, the ESC hot glued in, the telemetry radio hot glued in. Let's keep going. I don't have a video transmitter, but I can make up the cable for the telemetry radio and install the flight controller. Continuing along, I have installed the flight controller. That cable there still gonna have a routing problem. The GPS cable I made is just a hair short. God. Well, if I fix it up there, it'll be pretty much out of the way. That's the pan servo down there coming around and up into number 9. I had to put a little extension on that. Running the battery wire out like that's not the best solution, nor is running the ESC and the way I ended up doing it, but I just kept following everything that I had sort of been plodding along with. I hot glued the RC receiver. Oops, you can't see the RC receiver. Wow. How do I get that? Oh well. There's the 2 antennas on the bottom of the Crossfire Nano, but you can't see the RC receiver itself because of the 6-pin connector on the top. But I assure you, that's a Crossfire Nano Diversity RC receiver. I'm liable to just let those antennas come out the top right there like that. I may put Immortal T's on it, I'm not sure. Did run into one little depressing factor though, and I grabbed the wire for my ESC to bring it up to the flight controller and plug it into servo 3. And I guess last night it was down in the bottom in epoxy connector on the end. As you can see, so far 2 of the wires are not stopped up, but one of them is. I'm not sure how to try to. There, that's the best way. See, the left one and the center one are okay, but the right one is stopped up. I'm gonna have to try to see what I can do with that, or I may have to replace this connector. But this should go on servo 3 right down there. Need to make up a cable from the telemetry radio up here, longer this time, to UARTs right here. Then the camera will plug in here from the front, and the video transmitter will plug in right here. Don't have the video transmitter until Friday. So, guess I'll get started on the connector for the cable for the telemetry radio. Not sure when I'm going to put the V-tail on. I want those to stay off as long as possible so they're not in the way when I'm moving this around and working with it. It's just extra stuff. But the left V-tail would go up in here into servo 2. The right V-tail goes up in to RC4. RC2, RC4, RC3 is the ESC, and the ailerons on the wings, of course, are RC1. So there's 4 channels there. Then I'll have 2 channels for the pan and tilt on the front. All the rest of the channels, though, you know, there's channels that do modes, there's channels that do return to launch, there's channels that do increase my video, transmitter power, etc., etc., etc. Those don't have to physically have a connection to the flight controller. They're more logical. So, okay, let me see what's next. Oh man, big bummer. I just noticed that when trimming up around the nose, I cut my airspeed pressure tube with an X-Acto knife. Darn. Is that ever going to be hard to fix down in there? I guess I've reached a stall here. I don't think there's much more. Oh no, I'm going to keep building the telemetry cable, but darn, that is a bummer. There's the telemetry cable I soldered up to go from the flight controller to my 433 telemetry radio. Let me put that in there. I'll be right back. Okay, there it is. Going from the telemetry transceiver to UART 7 right here on the 765. The center one is the GPS. The outside one here is the RC receiver. All right, I'm going to power this up and test it. Okay, got it powered up. Got a green light on the transceiver for the telemetry. Got a green light on the RC receiver. You see it right there. The flight controller is working. Got light on the airspeed sensor. The GPS is powered. Now I am having one little problem. We'll look over here on the screen on the computer. And that little problem, and I've had it before, is when I connect, the telemetry radios do work. The cable does work. When I connect, it comes in here and it hangs right here, checking for a perimeter MAVFTP. I'll have to look that up. And it hangs right here on this for a while. And again, this isn't the only platform I've seen do it. It's in the telemetry radio someplace, and I'll work all that out. I'll search for it. But you can see here the telemetry connection is working. It's getting in all the perimeters. So my cable works. Everything works fine on that so far. I wonder if I was going to see if okay, if I'm rocking the platform, you can see in the upper left in the heads-up display, roll, pitch, and yaw. It's sensing all of it. So far, so good. I'm at the point of starting to configure my flight controller. I kind of done enough for today. It's almost 9 o'clock tonight, and
This video is kind of long. I've still got to publish it, so I'm going to kind of knock off for today and start getting after it again tomorrow. Thank you guys so much for everything.